Welcome to Social Aloe Ministries, where we glorify God and we expose the devil. We're going to speak about why you are not blessed. In some cases, it's why you're not blessed like you used to be. And I'll state this up front. Sometimes you're not blessed because of the way you treat or treated someone the Lord sent into your life to be a blessing to you. Could be a spouse, co-worker, a minister. Let me add this caveat right now. I'm not someone coming to you trying to, for example, manipulate money out of you. No, because this is not about money. It's about honor. How do you honor those the Lord put into your life to be a blessing unto you? Because there's some things that you expect from God himself, but he sends a person to be that blessing unto you. Some of you have rejected your blessing. You remember how David was carrying the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem? And when Uzzah touched it and the Lord killed him, that David got scared. And he put the Ark in Obed-Edom's house. And then he heard that the Lord was blessing Obed-Edom because he had the Ark. At that point in time, David was like, I need to get this Ark in my presence so I can get these blessings. So David recognized that the Ark was a blessing and that he needed to have it and be a steward over it to receive those blessings. Obed-Edom was taking good care of the Ark. But in some cases, it's the people that you're not honoring. So in Genesis 30, we look at the story of Jacob. And throughout this entire thing, the Lord may bring someone to your mind. Think of how that person was to you or is to you. How your life changed as a result of that person. And then think about how you treated that person in return. Or how you are treating that person in return. So in Genesis 30, and this was after Jacob had worked 14 years in order to marry Laban's two daughters. And in those marriages, you probably know the story. Jacob had made a covenant with Laban to work 7 years in order to marry his daughter, his younger daughter Rachel. But on the wedding night, Laban switched out daughters. And Jacob ended up marrying Leah, a woman he hated. So they made another covenant with Laban that at the end of the marital week, he'd get to marry Rachel, but he'd have to work another 7 years for her. Laban, he wasn't upright with Jacob. He started cheating him from day one. So in Genesis 30, verse 25, and it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph, and Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go unto mine own place and to my country. Oh yeah, this is another reason why some people are not blessed. It is that person's time to go, but you want to hold on to that person. Like you may know the person was a blessing to your ministry, but you want to hold on to that person longer than the person needs to be there. That is also bad too. Because if the person needs to go, the Lord wants a person to go. And when you're interfering with that, you're interfering with the Lord's plans. And then you become at enmity with the Lord. So please pay attention to all these things regarding why you may not be blessed, especially if you were blessed in times past. And it continues, give me my wives and my children for whom I have served thee, and let me go. For thou knowest my service which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry. For I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. So Laban was perceptive. He knew the Lord had blessed him because of Jacob. Who has or did the Lord send to bless you? Did you recognize it? Did you see the changes? How did you treat that person? And he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. Can you imagine you're about to leave your job and your boss tells you that you can choose your wages? But it also begs the question, what was he paying Jacob before this? And he said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little, which thou hast before I came, and it is now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming. And now, when shall I provide for mine own house also? So Jacob clearly knows that because of his presence, the Lord was blessing Laban. But Laban wasn't even giving him stuff to be able to provide for his own house. Those are filthy conditions. Laban was not honoring Jacob. But at least at this point in time, the Lord is still blessing him. But then they made a deal. And even after making this deal, Laban tried cheating Jacob. So no integrity. But the Lord is watching. And the Lord would reveal things to Jacob in dreams. He would reveal things to Jacob in dreams. He may have heard about the wealth of the wicked being laid up for the just. Well, in time, a part of the deal that they made was that Jacob would get some of Laban's livestock. And Jacob's livestock started multiplying at a rate faster than Laban's. Because the Lord is a just God. So it's like the blessings turn into a curse because of Laban's unrighteousness. Because he wasn't honoring Jacob, the one who had been a blessing to him. And I'll go to chapter 31. And he, Jacob, heard the words of And he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob hath, and that's the Lord. And he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's. No, it was the Lord who did it. And by the way, if you're someone who's been a blessing to someone or others, and they didn't give you the honor, the Lord is watching, and he's a just God. And he will turn things in your favor at some point in time. So do not let other people's unrighteousness cause you to start doing the same. And of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. Know who labor among you, Recognize the signs when you need to leave. And sometimes many need to leave without any notice. And the Lord said unto Jacob, Return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. Now the Lord told Jacob to leave. When the Lord tells you what to do, that is what you need to do. Do not follow any person at that point in time. Obey God. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. And is this something? Someone was a blessing to you, and now you're going to start acting foul towards them? But the God of my father hath been with me, and ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. Again, the dishonor that Laban was showing Jacob. And yes, Jacob was a servant. Jacob was also his son-in-law, and he was changed his wages 10 times. He was trying to outsmart God. If he said thus, the speckled shall be my wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring-straked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring-straked. So Laban was trying to do all this stuff to outsmart God, but the Lord wanted to bless him. So all those blessings were pouring out. So if someone has been sent to be a blessing unto you, and you haven't been treating that person right, don't be surprised if the Lord takes what you have and gives it to that person one way or another. That kind of reminds me of how later on, when Saul was being afflicted by an evil spirit, he had David come and play music for him, and he got some deliverance from it. But then Saul tried killing David, the one who was such a blessing to him. Oh, and by the way we sometimes do this to people who are being a blessing to us is sometimes the way we treat the Lord. He blesses us and we turn our back on him. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, or grizzled. Be in tune with the things the Lord may show you as a way he wants to pay you back. Restore all the years the locust has eaten. God is just, and at some point in time, the wickedness of the wicked will come to an end. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us. And hath quite devoured also our money. So absolutely no respect for anyone. Laban was true like a locust, just eating everything in sight. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God had said unto thee, do. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, and the cattle of his getting which he had gotten unto Padan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel has stolen the images that were her father's. The images. So Laban was an idol worshiper. He was serving another god, or gods. But yet the Lord was still blessing him because of Jacob's presence. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban, the Syrian, and in that he told him not that he fled. Like I mentioned before, sometimes you need to leave and don't tell anyone. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward Mount Gilead. So Jacob only took his stuff. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. And he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey. So Laban couldn't even let it go. And they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob, neither good or bad. So when you're in right standing with the Lord, he will defend you. He will defend you. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword? Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me? And I pause for a second. The Lord told Laban, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. That should have been an indication that maybe it was in Laban's best interest to just turn around. But he's still speaking with Jacob, at least to a point. So does not tell me that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, and tabret, and with harp. You can't trust that snake, Laban. He has been trustworthy all those years. Staying behind would have given him a chance to steal some of Jacob's things that he had acquired lawfully through the Lord. And hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. It is in my power of my hand to do you hurt. But the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. So he knew it was the Lord, and he knew what the Lord had said. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? Okay, he won his idols back. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. Very perceptive. With whomsoever thou findest thy God, let him not live. before our brethren, discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. Jacob had he just put a curse on Rachel, saying, whosoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. And later on, Rachel got pregnant with Benjamin, and she died after giving birth. She died after giving birth. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tents. But he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent, and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images, and put them in the camel's furniture, and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said of her father, let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. So she was claiming that she was menstruating. And he searched, but found not the images. Sadly, Rachel was holding on to something that was not of the Lord. That was not good. And Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. This 20 years I have been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. That which was torn of beast I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. And of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was in the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and mine sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. So all those things that Jacob had done right, to be a blessing to Laban and his household, but the entire time Laban tried cheating him, working 14 years for his 2 daughters when he only should have worked 7 years for 1. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hast sent me away now empty. I hope someone has not been a blessing to you, and you'd send a person away absolutely empty, drained. I mentioned to someone recently, I'll put it how I actually did, but I mentioned to someone recently that some people, when it comes to ministers, they will pull on those ministers, and it's like they will milk a cow without feeding it. For example, I've had people ask me, how can they sow into this ministry? The first thing I always say is prayer. And there are people who will, for example, come to a minister and they won't even pray for that minister in return. Because in some cases, when a minister helps you, that minister incurs spiritual warfare And if you don't even invest the time to pray for the minister. So again, recognize how you're treating people, especially when you know the Lord sent a person to be a blessing unto you. So Laban would have sent Jacob away absolutely empty. That is a parasitic relationship. That is not honoring to the Lord. God hath seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. Wow. And what can I say this day unto these my daughters, and unto their children which they have borne? So Laban, it was all about him. These are my daughters, my cattle. My. It was all about him. And then he said, Now therefore, come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. Jacob made a covenant, and a part of it was basically he couldn't marry anyone else except for those he had already married. Jacob made a covenant with Laban. Do not make covenants with someone who's basically a messenger of Satan. And definitely don't make covenants with the devil. Don't make covenants with someone who has abused you, someone who's been untrustworthy. And interestingly, things run in families. Jacob had 13 children. The 12th child was the first son with Rachel, Joseph. And there are similarities. Once Joseph was sold into slavery, he too was a blessing. He too got mistreated. Not quite the same way. So let's take a look at Genesis 39. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord, I'll pause for a second. And you may know, in Genesis 37, a part of how this came about was Joseph had 2 dreams. And the Lord showed Joseph that his family would bow down to him. His brothers got jealous and ended up selling him to slavery, which was better than killing him, which was what they initially conspired to do. But little did his brothers realize at the time that the dreams that the Lord gave Joseph with his brothers or his family bowing down to him was actually him would eventually be a blessing to them. So they almost killed their deliverer. They almost killed the person the Lord sent to bless them. Again, honor those who are blessing to you. And I hope at this point in time, in some cases, you might look at those who have been a blessing to you, and if you dishonor them, then you may want to make things right. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. The Lord is with Joseph and made him prosper even in slavery. And his master saw the Lord was with him. His master saw it. And that the Lord made him all that he... I'll start off again. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. Now Joseph had a gift for interpreting dreams. Daniel also had that gift. And there was a time after Nebuchadnezzar's death where Belteshazzar was the king. And the queen mentioned that there's a man who the spirit of the God or God was with him. So Daniel had that reputation also. So even in dark places, the Lord can use you as his beacon of light. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had put into his hand. And it came to pass from that time that he made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. I mentioned about the Ark of the Covenant at Obed-Edom's house. The Ark had the 10 Commandments. It's like carrying the presence of God. When someone's carrying the presence of God, that comes with blessings. How are you honoring those kind of people? And he left all that he had in Joseph's hands, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. So he entrusted everything to Joseph, didn't have to worry about anything. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." Isn't something when you're trying to do the right thing and the devil trying to put a snare in your life, trying to ruin your relationship with the Lord, trying to ruin your relationship with those who are putting their trust in you? But she's also doing something dangerous if Joseph is being a blessing to her household, her family. But she's willing to do something to sabotage that. You may have heard, the Lord doesn't bless no mess. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, "Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he had to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife." So Joseph recognized boundaries. "And how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" So Joseph was a blessing to the household, but he also realized that Potiphar was a blessing to him. And Joseph was not going to mess with that. Joseph was honoring his master. Joseph was honoring the man who was a blessing to him. Joseph was also honoring the God that was a blessing to him. Joseph understood the principle of honor. And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, that there was none of the men of that house there within. Oh boy, you got to look out for those traps. And she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. So that's great. Joseph would even cross the lines with her, even though he did leave some of his garments. I'm glad the story's over. Oh, there's more. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. Isn't it amazing? You do everything right, and people even lie on you. Anything to try to destroy you. Sometimes not knowing that their efforts to destroy you means they're destroying themselves. Being a blessing is a double-edged sword. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. Thus set up. And she spake unto him according to those words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought into us came in to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. Wow. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. Know when you have a good thing, and when others will come along and destroy it. Do not make emotional decisions. Joseph was a righteous man, but now he was listening to his wife. And what was Potiphar going to do? And Joseph's master took him and put him in the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. Okay, the good news is he didn't put Joseph to death, but Joseph went from slavery to prison. Not only did Joseph go from slavery, but he was the steward of the master's house. So being in prison is truly a downgrade. But the Lord was with Joseph, oh boy, and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So the blessings were going worse where Joseph was. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. You probably know the scripture where it tells you that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. All these things that were going on for Joseph, the Lord was still with him. So learn to recognize that despite your circumstances, that the Lord is still with you. There's a point where Jesus was walking on water. His apostles were in a ship and they saw him. But Peter said, if that's you, have me come on the water with you. And Peter walked on water for a bit until he looked at the storm and fear set in. He took his eyes off the Lord and he started sinking. Regardless of your situation, keep focus on the Lord. Jesus is a Prince of Peace, and he'll even give you peace in a storm. And one of the ways to tell that the favor of the Lord is on you is that regardless of your circumstances, you're like the cream and you just keep on rising to the top. And make the best of your situation, because you never know. The Lord may put you in a position for a reason. And if the enemy puts you in a position trying to take you off track, like Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. So the Lord was with Joseph. And it was while Joseph was in prison that and I should read this. I have a lot of reading to do in this teaching. Start in chapter 40. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against his two officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And just to summarize, the cupbearer and the baker were put in prison with Joseph. That positioned them to where both of them had a dream. The Lord used Joseph to interpret both those dreams. For the baker, the consequences were dire. Joseph told the baker that in 3 days, the Pharaoh was going to lift his head off. So he was going to kill him. He was going to execute him. But he told the cupbearer that in 3 days, the Pharaoh was going to reinstate him to his position. And I'll go down to verse 20. Regarding the fulfillment of these things. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler to his butlership again. And he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, and as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. And a part of that was, Joseph told the cupbearer, the butler, when you get reinstated, put in a good word for me with the Pharaoh. So he forgot about him. Left Joseph to rot in jail. That is how he honored the person who was a blessing to him. But God. But God. Skipping to verse 41. The Pharaoh had 2 dreams that the Lord had given him. And I'll start off in verse 8. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in the ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored into mine office, and him he hanged. So it's good, at least now the cupbearer, the butler, was remembering what Joseph had done. And yes, there are times when you're a blessing to a person, the person could have spoken upon your behalf, but didn't do it at that point in time. But if it's the Lord's will, he will make a way. And in this case, he brought it to the recollection of the butler about Joseph. Imagine this for a second. The butler tells the Pharaoh of this. Then Pharaoh sends for Joseph, and Joseph is no longer alive. What do you think would happen to the butler? What do you think would happen to the butler? The same thing happened to the baker. He would have been executed because there was someone who could have been a blessing that he didn't speak up for at that time. But it also speaks about do not hold any animosity towards someone who could have helped you but did not, even though you may have been a blessing to them. Because your dependency is upon the Lord, not people. Which is one of the things the Lord used that 2-year period to teach Joseph, to depend on him, the Lord God, as opposed to the butler or anyone else. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. When the Lord lifts you up, he cleans you up. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Daniel also said the same thing to King Nebuchadnezzar. But a part of that just shows how both men were humble. Not saying, oh yeah, I can interpret a dream. No, it's God who gives the interpretation. They're recognizing God as the one. So there are times when the Lord will allow you to go through what they call the pit, the prison, before he allows you to go to the palace. But all those trials are to humble you. And when you read Genesis 37, where Joseph was telling his dreams to his family, now he is a much more humble man. The Lord had to work on his foundation. And now that he had to work on his foundation, then he could exalt him. Because God exalts the humble. And he will put you through a process to humble you before he exalts you. Because pride goes before a downfall. Or pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before it fall. So he will temper you so that the things that he has to bless you in the future, that it won't become a stumbling block for you. So, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored. And they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored, as at the beginning, so I awoke. This is not the interpretation for the dream, but the Pharaoh saw 7 fat cattle and 7 lean, ill-looking cattle. The lean ones ate the fat ones, but they still looked ill. They were still lean. It's like how sometimes people may try to destroy you, as if destroying you is going to make them better, but they still remain in the same position, even if they could destroy you, even if their efforts succeeded. And it continues. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears, withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, and there was none that could declare it to me. He was going to the wrong source. But in this case, it was the Lord who shut down those magicians so they could interpret it to make a way for Joseph. And that ties into Revelation 3, 7 through 8, where it speaks about Jesus having the keys of David. And he's the one that opens doors that no one can shut. And he shuts doors that no one can open. So when the Lord makes a way for you, no one is going to get in because it is just for you. And Revelation 8 speaks about how he knows that you have little strength, but you have not denied his name. Joseph had been through the ringer, but he still came out glorifying the Lord. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one, for God had shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. The 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears, blasted with the east wind, shall be 7 years of famine. This is a thing which I have spoken unto the Pharaoh, what God is about to do to he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And by the way, I pause for a second. With Joseph giving the Pharaoh the interpretation of a dream, he was prophesying to him, telling him things to come. But rather than saying, oh, I see this, or Joseph was also giving him directions based on information, here's what you need to do. As a part of maturing in your prophetic gift, it's not about what you can see, but what does it mean to that person? What does the person need to do? If it's a blessing, what does the person need to do to prepare for that blessing? If it's a potential curse, what does the person need to do in order to prevent that from happening? So there's some people who say that they're prophets or they'll interpret dreams, etc. But basically it's like see and say. It doesn't give direction. But Joseph, under the unction of the Holy Spirit, was giving clear directives to the Pharaoh. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh. And let them keep food in the cities, and that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. So the dream interpretation resonated with Pharaoh. But here's the thing. Now that he's seen the gift in Joseph, what is he going to do? What some people do here, they see someone being a blessing to them and say, okay, thank you. The Pharaoh could have had Joseph put back in prison. But let's see how the Pharaoh would treat Joseph. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? Pharaoh recognized that. And Pharaoh is a God king, alleged God king. But he recognized the Spirit of God in Joseph. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, forasmuch as God hath shown thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. So Pharaoh recognized the blessing, recognized Joseph's qualities, and was going to use him accordingly. But it also speaks to all the things that Joseph had been through. When he was a slave, he was a steward over his master's house. When he was in prison, he was a steward in the prison. He was the overseer. It's like, you may have been going through hell, but how has the Lord been using you while you've been going through hell? What has he been doing or allowing to happen to you to prepare you for the things to come? Maybe you want to pause the video to think about those things for a while. But I continue. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. Oh, by the way, you may have heard this popular saying in preaching circuit about get ready, get ready, get ready. Well, one of the things the Lord revealed to me is don't get ready, be ready. Because when the Lord moves, he may take a long time, but when he moves, it is quick. When he moves, it is quick, it is swift. You have to be ready. You have to be able to go from the prison to the palace in one day and function without missing a beat. And that's part of the reason why the preparation is so hard. He's truly preparing you. And when he promotes you, you are ready. So don't get ready. Be ready. Oh, that reminds me. Like Proverbs tells you that he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. He said he who finds a wife, not a future wife. So for example, if you're waiting on the Lord to bring a spouse into your life, be a wife now, be a husband now. Be ready so you can make that transition. Because also one of the things I have noticed that there are times when the Lord brings people together and they get married quickly. Sometimes it doesn't take that long. I remember I met this couple last year. The first person I met was a man. And he married his wife, I think it was 2 weeks or I think it was more 2 months after they first met. They've been married for over 50 years. It was the Lord who brought them together. It happened quickly, but it has lasted. So, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. What a promotion. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him. Let me pause for a second. Imagine if Joseph had actually slept with Potiphar's wife. And not to say that the Lord couldn't redeem that, because it had been 2 years. So maybe people would have forgotten. But at least Joseph had a track record, character. But some of us, we need the blood of Jesus. We need forgiveness. but Joseph was a man of character. It says, bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah. Zaphnath-Paneah. And he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of On. And Joseph went out all over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when that happened. So suddenly Joseph went from a man who was in prison to the second highest ruler in Egypt. Which means Potiphar, whom he used to work for, and the wife who did that to him, Joseph had authority over them. Joseph was the second highest ruler. So there are times when you're blessing the people and they have mistreated you. They may have cast you out. The Lord will have a promotion for you somewhere else. And those who were once above you will be beneath you. But a part of the humility is having that grace regarding how you treat others. Having that grace regarding how you treat others. So like I mentioned, this is not about money, it's about honor. And it's not about just honoring those in ministry, but just honoring those who the Lord sent to be a blessing to you. And I'll finish, I think, with this. The story of Naaman, the Syrian who needed help. Because when I say it's not about money, like if any minister wants to see this message and wants to use it to pervert it, to try to get people to give you money, think again. Forget about your Cash App, your PayPal, or anything like that. Because if you want honor, you also have to honor the Lord and be honorable. So 2 Kings 5, starting verse 1. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God, my Lord, were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. So that young lady was taken from Israel to Syria. And as a slave, a servant, she was being a blessing to the household by bringing this up. So sometimes the Lord will allow the enemy to take you. But you're going to be a blessing to someone for God's glory. So again, Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and have been called according to his purpose. And your calling may not always be glorious. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, Thus and thus said the maid that is of the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send and letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed, and took with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of raiment. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now, when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou may recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes. Oh, by the way, the young lady had said, would God, my Lord, were with the prophet that is in Samaria, that he would recover him of his leprosy. She didn't say anything about the king. She said the prophet. We have to follow the instructions that the Lord gives us. So, and it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes and said, am I God, to kill and to make alive, that this man doth send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. And it was so, when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him now come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. A part of that is, know when something comes to you that it is not in your lane. Now, Elisha said, send Naaman to me so that he would know that there's a prophet in Israel. There are different types of prophets. In the Bible, it says that John, even though he was great, that he did no miracles. So do not use this by saying, well, if a person is a prophet, that he or she must do these things. The gifting is according to how the Lord gifts a person. Like Joseph, you didn't hear anything about him healing anyone. He interpreted dreams, and he stuck with that. So what's what the Lord has called you to do and gifted you to do, do that. If you go out of your lane, you may end up looking like you're a false prophet, a false minister, whatsoever the case may be. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth and went away, and said, behold, I thought, he will surely come out to me, and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place, and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in rage. And a part of me reading that, if the Lord gives you a solution to a problem, follow those instructions. Don't think because the Lord said this and you don't agree with it, then you're not going to do it. You may miss your blessing. You may miss your blessing. And his servants came near and spake unto him, and said, my father, if the prophet had bid thee to do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith to thee, wash and be clean? Simple instructions. Obey the Lord. You can't go wrong. Then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. By the way, some people pervert scriptures. For example, 1 Kings 17, where the Lord sent Elijah, Elisha's predecessor, to the widow of Zarephath, and she was going to make her last meal. And Elijah told her to make a meal for him. Some people pervert that as a way to try to get you to give them their last. Some ministers. But when she made a meal for Elijah, the flour didn't run out. When Naaman obeyed Elisha, he was cleansed. which shows that he was truly representing the Lord. So the other part of this is be careful about giving honor to those who claim that they're serving the Lord, but there's no fruit of that. Be careful about giving honor to those who claim that they're serving the Lord, giving you instructions, and when you do those instructions, you do not get the results. When it's from the Lord, he will back up his words. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came, and stood before him, and he said, Behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth. And this part of the thing is, the Lord wanted to show Naaman that he was God, and he used all those things, the little slave girl, and then his prophet, to show Naaman. Then Naaman could go back to Syria and speak about the Lord. I read it again. Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel. Now therefore, I pray thee, take a blessing off thy servant. And this is good. Naaman wanted to at least honor the man of God. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. That is a part of being a man of God. Elisha was not going to take anything from Naaman. What Elisha's purpose was to give to Naaman. So because of the healing, he shared the Lord with him. Yes, there may be a time when the Lord may have you accept things from people. And there are times when he won't. You have to honor the Lord. Joseph honored the Lord by not messing with Potiphar's wife. Elisha honored the Lord, in this case, by not taking an offering. How many ministers do you know that will say no to an offering? We also see another man of God. And today we use the term man of God or woman of God too loosely, because that term is seldom used in the Bible, and when it does, it refers to someone who's in good standing with the Lord. In 1 Kings 13, there are two prophets. The prophet from Bethel was called a prophet. The one from Judah was called a man of God, because of the two of them, the Judean was honorable. Another man of God was Samuel. When Saul went to go see Samuel because he was looking for his father's donkey, Saul did not want to go to the prophet empty-handed, and he went with a small offering because he wanted to honor the man of God. But Samuel never took that offering. Samuel actually had some meat, some food prepared for him through a feast for Saul. Then gave him the prophecy of his life to let him know that he was going to be king over Israel. And that some other things were going to happen that very day. So like I mentioned earlier, this is not about money. It is about honor. Honoring God, honoring others, and blessing those who are blessing to you. Blessing is not always about money. So again, this is about honor. And in the end, all the glory goes to God. Thank you for watching. I pray this has been beneficial to you. And like I mentioned earlier, if someone's been a blessing to you and you didn't truly honor that person, now's your chance to make it right, if possible. And if you have been a blessing to others and they dishonored you, know that the Lord is faithful despite people's unfaithfulness. God bless you.